Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out, thanks and appreciation first and foremost to new Patreon, Justin Duso. So massive shout out to you, my friend. Also, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Chris Hillman, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, Burn Fat Till My Stomach Is As Flat As the Earth, Nathan Thompson, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Missouri Bear, Henrik 86, Liam Nedrick, Erwin Jennisons, Abraham Mohammed, Dave Rakia Gafford, Nai Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, Felix Hung, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, Alexander Main, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'll raise the mic on whoever is in the Discord server so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Don't let me stop you. You guys can talk.
What's up, Flatside?
This guy. Hey, 10.
Good morning.
Hey, 10th.
Good morning. Well, we're daylight savings matches now.
Have your clocks caught up to ours now?
Yeah.
We don't seem to have that type of technology.
No more time travel for me.
I'm stuck in the future.
Yes, you are. But then that is the nature of light. Just a little inside joke, right?
Yeah. Shame. I was just joking around with John D.
That was great. And there, in a flash, it was over. Oh, good weekend for you, Flatsoid?
Yeah. It was good. Nice lazy weekend. Actually relaxed quite nicely. It was raining
Good.
all weekend, so it was a nice cool off.
How far are you from the ocean? Or are you nearby?
Sure. About, I'd say 20 hours drive from the nearest ocean.
Oh, okay, so a good ways.
Yeah. I'm like in the middle.
You get a lot of rain down there where you live, or is it
Nah,
mostly?
no, the bush doesn't get that much rain. But at least it is rain season now, so we do get now and then we get the rain. But we've been having a bit of a drought the last few years.
What do you mean the bush?
The bush. As in,
Bush country.
yeah. You know, where all the lions live and the zebras walk around here with our loincloths.
Without
The
loincloths.
jungle. We call it jungle.
Nah, the jungle is different. This is, have you ever watched a nature program about even lions? It's like this.
Yeah, I guess they're
Serengeti-
not in a jungle. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, I hear what you're
between the
saying.
desert. Yeah, it's like between the desert and the jungle, you could say.
Bush.
Yeah, bush.
So I've been chatting with a guy off of one of Nathan's shows in the comments section, and He's talking about the atmosphere gripping everything, as if that has to do anything with Coriolis, right? And his last comment was amazing. Let's see if I can find it.
Any evidence of that grip?
Oh, that's
What is it like the kung fu grip?
yeah, it's
G.I. Joe kung fu grip?
just amazing where they go just to support their sphere. If I can find
Yeah, we
it.
had a guy in Discord do that last night. We had a guy in 24/7 come in last night
Mhm.
with the trying to talk about what was that, eclipses? QE just cut him right at the legs, and somebody else who's a flat earther did not understand why he can't explain what he thinks it is.
So this is the last comment he wrote. That's kind of lengthy. Hang on. See if I can. So I'm talking about Earth-based Coriolis, and we're going back and forth. And he goes on this. Yes, gripped by air, as Coriolis does no work by the air and aircraft does. Guess what happens? The fact it's also measurable, and you won't measure it yourself, is very telling. Your response is also extremely vague, almost like you're overwhelmed. He's trying to think, like I'm overwhelmed, he's saying. And then he goes, why do you need aerodynamics to cut through air? To escape its grip? Question mark.
Sod all
This
to
is
do with,
engine.
sod all to do with Coriolis. Coriolis
I know.
is observed from the ground while you spin. So the projectile, its motion, the aerodynamic, nothing to do with Coriolis.
I know it's so ridiculous. It is so off the subject, but it's interesting how he ends it. The fact that you're trying to equate irrefutable, demonstrable engineering to an argument shows what you're all about. I mean, it's just, in a sense, trying to tell me where I'm coming with my motivation here, like I'm hiding. Utterly ridiculous. Please take your time to study aerodynamics, why it is needed in the event you fail to do so, and you provide another inadequate response, it will be graciously accepted as a forfeit. I really believe they're having a conversation with themselves instead of somebody else.
Yeah, well, it's a projection. That appeal to motive fallacy, and then followed by, I will take the win if you don't answer the way I want you to. In other words, unless you take my non sequitur about the projectile when Coriolis is observed from the ground and not actual deflection because you're spinning underneath something, then I will take a win. In other words, talk about the projectile and how it's dragging through the air, rather than your observation of it as you spin on the ground, as it's claimed to prove we spin. That's supposed to be the claim's proof of spin. Nothing to do with the projectile, everything to do with you observing it as you spin. Something we don't see. Nothing's drifting away from us. But he's saying, either accept my non sequitur fallacy and my appeal to motive fallacy, or I'll let you forfeit. All right, good for you. Piss off. Go forfeit. Say what you like. Doesn't mean Earth spins underneath. Doesn't mean things are drifting away from us at 15 degrees an hour. If you don't understand the argument, doesn't mean you win.
I know. The ending is classic. Here's the ending. Pick up a 6-foot square piece of wood, then run forward with it. The air will grip the wood, making it hard for you to run. That's easy enough for you. My goodness.
Again,
What
Coriolis.
has friction got to do with what?
Nothing. It's you turning underneath something. You spinning while a wood isn't attached to the frame of reference that you're spinning on. That's what Coriolis is. Nothing to do with the wood gathering up momentum. It makes no difference whatsoever to you observing it not doing something because you're spinning underneath it. That's Coriolis drift. It drifting away because you're spinning underneath it. It could be stationary. It makes no difference. The only inducible reason for that effect is you turning underneath something not attached to your spinning reference frame. That's what causes things to drift away from you.
Well, Craig from Fight Flat Earth seems to think you only need one reference frame for Coriolis. And then comes and tells me I don't understand it.
Well,
He's an idiot.
He doesn't understand what drift means. Drift means things drifting apart, not moving together. Drifting apart isn't the same as moving together. They don't understand what drift is. That's it, moving apart.
Yeah, this guy said there's infinite amount of reference frames. So Craig and the other ballers have a few things they got to iron out.
Yeah, who cares what they think? Coriolis effect
I
is
know
merely
it.
you turning underneath something not attached, watching it seem to drift because you're turning underneath it. It's claimed Earth does that. That means things would drift away from us as we turn underneath them. And that does not happen. Them saying, oh, well, look, I can show things moving together. Well, that's not drifting apart. They're supposed to drift apart at 15 degrees an hour. If they're not drifting apart, there's no drift.
So I wrote a few things before. I said, if it was measurable, then all one needs to do is to go up in the helicopter and hover, waiting for the destination to spin underneath, west to east, at over 1,000 miles per hour at the presupposed sphere's equator. So you're wrong again. Cheers. That's what I told him. Then he responds, nope, the helicopter is gripped by air. You need power plus aerodynamics to escape the grip of air. As Coriolis does not do any work, it cannot begin until you break the grip of air. See, you just demonstrated you're pretentious and not qualified to discuss engineering. Ridiculous.
Yeah, he has no idea.
He doesn't understand
he's
he or
lost.
she doesn't understand what Coriolis effect is. The projectile, its grip on air, its trajectory, all basically irrelevant because the effect is only induced from you turning underneath. So what you're going to describe in Coriolis is not what the projectile does. In fact, quite the contrary. It's what it isn't really doing, but seems to because you move underneath it. And it's only induced if you move underneath it, causing it to drift towards you or drift away from you. That's what drift is. And him saying, well, the projectile's going to be, who cares? To have Coriolis, I need to see it drifting away from me at whatever rate I'm turning underneath it, if I'm turning underneath it. People saying, well, they drift together. Really? So you launch a drone above a roundabout and you drift with the roundabout if you're the drone? No, of course not. You watch the drone hovering above the roundabout and you see it come towards you and go away, come towards you, go away. That's Coriolis effect. It doesn't go with the roundabout
Isn't the
spin.
air moving along with the Earth?
Oh, hello.
So no drift then. If it's moving with the Earth, they're not drifting apart at 15 degrees an hour. It's supposed to
Yeah,
drift
but your
apart.
roundabout analogy is just meaningless, isn't it? Because
Well, it's
the air isn't attached to the roundabout.
Well, then, if the air was attached to the roundabout, it wouldn't induce a Coriolis effect. You just ignored what I just said. So there'd be no
Why are you
drift.
interrupting?
There'd be no drift if the air was moving with the roundabout. The whole point of drift is
Why
that they
would you
move apart,
interrupt?
not move together. So if you're saying, well, it's not analogous to Earth because they move together, then there's no drift. Then no 15 degrees an hour of them drifting apart, you clown.
And not to mention, you just debunked your
I
whole
didn't
assertion
understand any
saying
of that, Nathan.
that
It's
gas
just-
can
hold on, Flatzoid.
gas can move
Flatzoid,
in lockstep.
hold on.
He just debunked his whole.
So no drift then.
What do you mean by drift?
Yeah, I know that you globeheads don't understand what the word drift means. That's patently obvious. Yeah, you don't know what drift means. We do.
I
You
asked
think
you a
drift...
question, Nathan.
Shut up! Can't you understand that when I talk, you don't? Haven't you
asked
been
a
disciplined
question,
enough by
Nathan.
me already? With me telling you to shut up when I talk? You don't know what drift means?
King-
Kind of a thicko are you? Look it up, you stupid idiot.
I
Go and
asked
look up
you-
what
I
drift
asked
means.
you.
Don't talk through me. Go and look it up, you stupid idiot. And ask me, the guy who understands what Coriolis effect is, when you've just told me there's no drift. Then you ask me to clarify what drift is. You've just said there isn't any. Moving together? That's not drifting apart, you moron. No 15 degrees an hour according to your, oh, well, the roundabout's not analogous because they're not moving together. Well, then there's no drift. Earth's supposed to have 15 degrees of it, you clown. So you're debunking the claim that Earth has Coriolis effect then? No drift then? No 15 degrees an hour then, clown? You may respond.
Drift doesn't mean moving away, by the way.
Oh, does it not?
No.
Oh, what does drift mean?
Do you want the Cambridge definition?
I don't give a shit. I know what drift means. It doesn't
You
mean
just said
moving
go look
together
it
with
up.
something.
I've just looked it up, and it
Well,
doesn't
what does it
mean
mean?
what you said.
What does it mean?
It means to move slowly, especially as a result of outside forces with no control over direction.
So, moving. Slowly.
You
And
said
in-
you said it means moving away. from
Yeah,
direction.
in Coriolis
doesn't.
drift. Yeah, in Coriolis drift, 15
Oh, you're
degrees an
changing
hour.
the goalposts,
My
Nathan.
friend, when I respond, don't continue
Change-
talking. Last chance.
Changing the goalpost.
No, just I understand what Coriolis effect is. You turning underneath something and it seeming to drift. That's it moving when you're actually turning under it. That's moving apart, not moving together. That's what drift means in the reference frames detailed in Coriolis.
You've just changed the goalposts again.
Sorry,
No,
I
just
understand
told you
what
the
Coriolis
context.
means. Why am I being interrupted? What's going on?
Sorry.
I understand what Coriolis apart. Drifting apart, mate. 15 degrees, moving apart. That's what it means. Not moving together.
You changed the goalposts. You asked me what.
Sorry, is that your third use of you're moving the goalposts? Because I'm going to just remove you from the conversation if all you can do is parrot the same non sequitur rebuttal that doesn't address what I've just detailed. 2 reference frames, you turning underneath something, and it appearing to move away from you or towards you because you're moving underneath it. Now, that's claimed to happen on Earth. We're supposed to be moving underneath stuff for it to drift at 15 degrees an hour. That's not moving together because there'd be no degrees an hour to note.
I think you're oversimplifying what happens.
Fuck off. You thick shit. You think I'm oversimplifying this, do you? No, I'm not oversimplifying it. Coriolis effect is drift induced from you turning under something not attached. That's you drifting towards or drifting away from something at a given rate because you're turning underneath it. I'm not oversimplifying it. I understand this. Idiots on the globe side don't know what drift means.
Can I ask a question?
No, he's gone. He's gone.
Yeah, I wanted to
Let me
tell him,
ask
has
a
he ever
question
been
to
on a
Nathan.
boat?
Hang on. Before you ask a question, if
Can
he's still
things
here.
drift?
Hang on,
Go ahead.
Neil. Before you ask that question, if he's still here. He read a definition of drift. But what he forgot to do is go back to how the ballers use drift within the context of Coriolis. And he's just reading a definition with no context. So he doesn't know where to put that drift. And he tells Nathan that he's moved the goalpost when Nathan is taking it to the goalpost and saying, you're using the word drift in relationship to Earth turning underneath things. And he can't put it in context.
Well, if you're on a boat and you are drifting away, you are moving separate to the island, aren't you? So
Yep.
that's drifting. So what's so difficult to understand?
Context. It's all context. And he took it out of context, but told Nathan that Nathan took it out of context.
It's all right, I'll contextualise their claim of a globe that's supposed to be proved by 15 degrees an hour of things drifting apart. It's claimed, as he says, I moved the goalpost, by Neil deGrasse Tyson, that the goalposts in his example moved underneath the ball. That's the ball seeming to curve through the goalposts because the goalposts have moved underneath the ball. So that's the goal and ball moving towards or moving apart from one another. Do you understand that Neil deGrasse Tyson is claiming Earth turns underneath the football for them to drift apart from one another? The goalpost and ball in this example? You understand that?
Yeah, he was wrong about that, but people can be wrong.
Oh, he was wrong? So there isn't any drift. Earth isn't showing... Bloody hellfire. So Earth isn't showing any 15 degrees an hour drift then? Things aren't drifting apart, as Neil deGrasse Tyson details, given that he understands what bloody drift means, unlike you. So, not drifting apart then. Neil deGrasse Tyson's wrong. No 15 degrees an hour. Earth isn't turning underneath of 15 degrees an hour, as per his claim of drift. You say he's wrong. No drift. No 15 degrees an hour. No Coriolis effect on Earth. That's what you're saying, right?
No, he was wrong in that example.
Yeah, so no drift then. So no 15 degrees an hour. So Earth not turning under a ball then. No Earth-based Coriolis. Neil deGrasse Tyson is wrong. We concur. Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson is wrong. Earth isn't turning underneath footballs. There is no 15 degrees an hour drift. Things aren't drifting away as we turn underneath on a rotating sphere Earth. You're right, it's just nonsense that he's making up. But he understands what Coriolis effect is and what Earth should do if it had it. So yeah, he is wrong. Earth does not do that. Earth isn't turning. Or there would be 15 degrees an hour drift, things moving apart or moving together, because we're claimed to turn underneath stuff and that doesn't happen. Good job, you agree. Welcome to non-rotating flat Earth. He's wrong, you're right. Neil deGrasse Tyson, idiot. Doesn't know what he's talking about. Earth isn't turning underneath Jack.
What Neil said about football.
Yeah, he said Earth turned underneath it to cause a 15 degrees an hour deviation. And you're saying he's wrong, and I agree. He is wrong. Earth isn't turning underneath anything. There is no Coriolis effect on Earth. Earth isn't spinning.
Example. He was wrong about that example, but...
Yeah, you keep telling us how he's wrong about that example with Earth turning underneath at 15 degrees an hour, and we agree. Neil's wrong. Earth is not turning. There is no drift. Nothing's drifting apart at 15 degrees an hour. He is wrong. That's right. Nice that we can clarify this with their side now. When they tell us, it's drifting together. No, that's an oxymoron.
Silly.
Drifting apart, there's supposed to be 15 degrees of it. So when you say, that's not analogous.
I've never seen a side try to argue both sides of their argument so bad as the ballers do on Coriolis.
I don't know, it's like they're just plain stupid or they just don't want to accept it.
Can they give me any example of stuff that is drifting at 15 degrees an hour? If Neil deGrasse Tyson's wrong, then maybe there are some claim proof that Earth spins in the form of this Coriolis drift they claim. Because according to this guy, that's not an example of 15 degrees an hour drift. It's claimed to be, but he says wrong. No, there's no proof of Earth turn then if there's no Coriolis drift.
Wasn't it the gyroscope that drifted? Nothing actually drifts, like physically.
Oh, so you understand that the gyro's drifting then? Drifting as Earth turns underneath it. You understand that the gyro, in its fixed frame of reference, has the Earth turning underneath it. So they move apart. So you do understand what drift is then?
They've isolated the friction of the air, haven't they? So they've taken that variable out of the equation with the gyroscope.
They've taken the what of the air? The second non-inertial reference frame turning underneath it. They've removed that. Yeah, that's the point. To show it turning underneath.
Oh, come on.
It's claimed to be...
Nathan,
yeah, there we are again with me
science.
responding to him and him just carrying on talking. Yeah, that's a claim that Earth turns underneath the fixed frame of a gyro. Gyro in the inertial reference frame, Earth turning underneath it. That's them drifting apart, mate, 15 degrees an hour.
No, that's not true.
Oh, so I'm wrong, even though I've said the exact same thing for every example of Coriolis with a roundabout, with Neil deGrasse Tyson's example, and now with this, the gyro. No, it's claimed that Earth's turning underneath it at 15 degrees an hour, but of course that would mean that things in the inertial reference frame would drift away from us, and they don't. And when it's pointed out that they are supposed to with a football, you say that's wrong. So no, it is definitely claimed to have Earth turning underneath it at 15 degrees an hour, so that the gyro's fixed frame of reference in the inertial frame of reference can drift away.
You're talking nonsense, Nathan.
Oh, a moment ago you didn't know what fucking drift was. Now you're telling me how a gyro is drifting as Earth's turning underneath it at 15 degrees an hour, but apparently I'm talking nonsense. Either you do understand that drift means them moving apart, or you don't understand that drift means moving apart because you're a thicko. Which is it? Thick, I assume. Because drift means moving apart. You're now detailing that with a gyro as Earth turns underneath, according to your claim.
No, I didn't say that.
That's the claim, you dumb crap. Like I care what you say. That is the claim of the gyro, you moron.
Well, it couldn't care. You're not American. Come on, Nathan.
Mate, the gyro is claimed to have Earth turning underneath it to cause the gyro to seem to drift at 15 degrees an hour. That's the moving apart because we have two reference frames. Now, when detailed in an example that would be practical with a football, you said, no, they don't drift apart. Then you questioned what the word drift meant. Said I was oversimplifying it and moving the goalposts. Right? No. You understand that drift means the gyro, in its fixed inertial frame of reference, has Earth as a non-inertial spinning reference, claimed to turn underneath it then. So they drift apart. So you do get drift. You were just playing stupid. Right? Being a dick.
You're either stupid or being...
No, I'm not going to be ad-hommed. Moments earlier you told us you didn't understand what drift is. You got us to define it. You went and defined it like it wasn't relevant. Now you're telling us about how the gyro drifts with Earth claimed to turn underneath it. So it seems in one frame of mind, you understand what drift is and will claim that a gyro's fucking drifting. And then when I point out that that would be Earth turning under a football, you say, no, that's wrong. And you don't understand what drift, and it's oversimplified and out of context. No, I just understand this stuff. You, on the other hand, are in a corner without a clue what to do except point out an Americanism. Like that's going to win you some points. No.
I could care less. No.
Yeah, like that's going to win you any points either. Your declaration of not caring about how badly you're losing. Yeah, you are. You're supposed to have Earth turning underneath. That would mean things drift away at 15 degrees an hour. Something you do actually understand, even though you obfuscated it, you lying piece of crap.
You need to look up how gyroscopes work, Nathan.
Yeah, I understand how the claim of Earth turning underneath at 15 degrees an hour works in your frames of reference that have been ruined by Simon Dan. I understand that.
You don't.
Yes, I do, you stuttering bitch. I understand how reference frames are supposed to claim to prove Earth spinning as Earth turns underneath, as is claimed by a heliocentric spinning Earth at 15 degrees an hour, to cause things to seem to drift away. I understand this. You are a stuttering buffoon.
Just word salad.
Excellent rebuttal. Word salad. No, a concise description of the coriolis drift we don't see because nothing's drifting away from us, ever.
Nathan, I got three slides in Master P for you to knock this guy out of the ring.
Okay.
Gotta start calling the stutterer Spider. You stumbling, stuttering prick.
Yeah, it's absolutely claimed that Earth's rotating underneath stuff at 15 degrees an hour. The fact that these dicks deny it when they get put up against a corner and demonstrate how it doesn't happen, they will fundy mute the living shit out of you, talk through every word as you point out that they're denying the thing that's supposed to claim they've got a spin of an Earth. That's what he's doing. No, I don't think you're right when you say things should drift apart. No, I don't say that, clown show. That's your globe claim, not my I don't understand Coriolis. I'm not claiming it. It's supposed to happen. Earth's supposed to turn underneath. It just doesn't, and when we point it out, you say we're oversimplifying things with word salad. No, we just understand Coriolis and how stupid you are.
I think you do understand.
You don't think I understand? I think you're a moron. Does it matter what we think? No, not really. It matters what I can prove, and demonstratably, we don't have Earth-based Coriolis effect. Nothing's drifting away at 15 degrees an hour.
You do understand.
You do stutter when you're up against the wall like every fundy IT bag.
Is that an ad hom?
No, it's a demonstration that when you're up against the wall getting annihilated, you stutter. Because you don't have a comeback. You can either pick one of two ways to die. Either declare that they're supposed to be travelling together, ergo no 15 degrees an hour drift, and then question me about what bloody drift means. Or accept that Earth is supposed to turn underneath, but that would mean things drift apart from us. And they don't. So choose your poison.
It's the very definition of an ad hom. Someone who stutters can still have a very good point, can't
you just totally ignored what your point, your argument is.
Yeah, that was an obfuscation tactic, not a response. Which poison do you want was my question. Do you want the poison of Earth's not really turning underneath, and then a bullshit just so story about how they're turning together to not give you drift at 15 degrees an hour? Or do you want to accept that Earth is supposed to be turning underneath stuff, as per Neil deGrasse Tyson's claim, that the ball drifted as you watched it from the stands because it's claimed you turned underneath it, in which case you could hover in a drone on the equator and it would drift away from you on the ground at 1,000 miles an hour? Now, one of those is going to be a death for you. That's why you're stuttering. Not an ad hom, a description of what's occurring.
Wow.
Vacuum, don't you realize you have no scientific evidence of anything?
Trying to back up your
what
ad
is holding
homs?
you to this religion?
No, I'm backing up my argument while I get interrupted. No, my argument is we're supposed to see a 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath stuff. That's your claim on the globe side. Nothing's drifting away from us, and when we point it out, you decide to ask for clarity on the word drift, even though you're later going to claim that a gyroscope's got the exact drift that I describe when I say Earth is claimed to turn underneath at 15 degrees an hour, but that would mean a drone would fly away 1,000 miles an hour on the equator. Maybe talk about ad homs I haven't used again.
What about the friction of the air?
What's that got to do with you rotating underneath something?
Nathan.
No, what's that got to do with you rotating underneath something?
Because the air rotates along with you.
So no drift then? So things aren't drifting apart as is claimed to prove Earth spins? They're not drifting apart at 15 degrees an hour then?
Because of physics, Nathan.
Oh, because physics is a rebuttal, is it? The physical? No, because of the physical. When this is a not actual effect, a non-physical effect, so absolutely not physics, you stupid clown. Not actual drift. The thing you're talking about having friction in the air isn't actually having any motion described when you describe not actual deflection because it's claimed you turn underneath it on a spinning Earth. That's you turning underneath it. The effect is not actual non-physical. Not physics, you stupid shit.
I've not heard so much shit in my entire...
It's not physics. Your rebuttal was just physics. It's a not actual drift. There's no physical anything to measure, you stupid twat. Yeah, laugh for me. That's what you do when you get teabagged. You giggle with a pair of testicles in your mouth. Your response to me was physics. That means physical. This is a not actual deflection, clown.
I've got enough for today, Nathan.
Optical.
You can block me now if you want. Or I might stay and take
I can
over your
shut you up.
entire
Yeah, I
show
will.
again.
Good. Yeah, I will. I'll do exactly that. Piss off. Get out. You're useless. All you did was giggle after your annihilation, you useless twat. Well, I enjoyed that.
Is he
Good start to a
stating
Monday.
That's what they
gas
do. They
can-
laugh when they're cornered.
Yeah.
Is he stating that gas can bond to objects when they spin?
Who cares? To see drift, you've got to have it not attached to your reference frame. The moment they attach it to the reference frame you're spinning on, you don't have any drift.
Exactly.
Just obfuscating this
He
full
screwed
of shit
himself.
the whole time, man. It's like he's only here to get you to yell.
He thinks he's not lying when he says, I don't think you understand, you're oversimplifying this. He thinks, I just don't get it. He's a flat earther, he's stupid, he doesn't understand how Earth's claimed to be turning underneath to cause drift at 15 degrees an hour. I understand it. Well, why isn't stuff drifting then? What does drift mean? That's where we go with these fundies. What, we're supposed to have drift? What's drift?
Yeah, he could keep coming on. He just makes himself look more stupid that they don't know what coriolis is.
No, they
They
don't.
know.
I don't know.
They know what
I don't know if
coriolis
he's
is
doing
in
it
relationship to Earth spinning. They just can't defend it. So when it comes to explaining it, they can't
I
go
don't think
there.
so.
No. Hear me out. If you say, is the Earth rotating? They're going to say yes. And then you bring up this not actual deflection, the coriolis effect. All of a sudden, they're in trouble. So they have to go steer away from it. So now they're arguing against the Earth rotating. But when it's convenient, they want to say the Earth is rotating. And then when you say prove it through the not actual deflection of Coriolis, if it's happening to that, then it's got to happen to a drone or hot air balloon or whatever. Well, now they're stuck because they can't prove it. So now they argue against the very claim.
I agree with you and disagree. I mean, if you don't even understand what drift is, how are you going to understand?
But he knew what drift was. He knew what drift. He knew what drift was because he took Nathan to the gyroscope.
Yeah, but everybody's heard gyroscope's supposed to drift. Doesn't mean he actually understands what drift means.
I agree.
Yeah, but your example.
They need to go on a roundabout. They need to go on a roundabout and do it themselves, like I did with my son, and throw a ball, and they'll see it. It looks like it curves, but it don't. It's all optical.
I'm going to agree with Flatsoid. They think they understand it, but they don't.
Right, because they change. It's a non sequitur. They go to another version.
That's what I said.
They go to They go to another version of a description that doesn't apply to their statement, and they want it to fit, but it won't fit. Like this guy in the chat with me, he says, grab a piece of wood and you're going to feel the air. Okay, fine. If I grab a piece of wood and stand with a 4x8 sheet of wood and the earth is turning, shouldn't I have this resistance 24/7? It don't happen.
If it don't fit, you must have quit.
I'm bored with that statement. What nonsense argument that guy gave me too.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Flatzoid, Arwin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hello, hello.
Trivia.
Morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Any evidence of a physical, geometric sphere-edge horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Not
No
since the Black
evidence.
Swan.
Yeah, not since the Black Swan. Well said. And before.
Yeah. Just imagination.
Any evidence of
It's-
axial rotation?
Nope.
You first need a radius before you can have the actual rotation of a sphere.
Well, if there was axial rotation, then we would notice that. But we don't. There's no Earth-based coriolis.
Yeah,
Reference frame ruined.
we don't drift away. I don't jump 460 meters away.
There's no reference frames, but at the same time, there's infinite reference frames. It's all a matter of perspective.
It's context.
Whether you're going to perceive things from a mind experimental point of view or there really is. So either you have infinite reference frames or you have no reference frames. But they don't like to pick.
Well, even
They
if you
try to keep it in quantum flux, they just want it all at the same time and none of it at the same time.
even if you have infinite reference frames for a couple, let's say, you still need to use it in the context of what you're trying to prove and say. For example, the coriolis effect, as Nathan describes, would be observed if you were on the roundabout, and then something that hovers above the roundabout, say a drone. Well, there's two reference frames right there. But they're saying that applies to Earth, except it's never seen or proved.
Infinite ruined reference frames.
Ah, there you go. I like that.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core?
Nope.
Nope.
And it seems like every time it is at rest in some way, it always leads to absolute catastrophe. Isn't that just special?
Any
In
evidence
movies?
of the distance to the sun?
Nope. I don't think there is a distance to the sun.
How can you measure a distance to an intangible object?
Excellent question. You can't. That goes for
You
both
could
sides.
have an apparent distance, though.
Yeah, you can have an apparent size. Yeah. Not actual, you mean?
Yes.
That's nice. And
So
not actual
within
size.
the holographic perceival of it, you could have a virtual distance. It just wouldn't really work out when you then try to use that as a triangulation method in the physical world. That's a problem.
Yeah, both sides of the argument do it, though, don't they? They both think they can triangulate this intangible object. Hey, Chocolate.
Yep.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, gravity, oh, gravity.
Don't be shy in Discord. Any scientific evidence of gravity emerged over the weekend, perhaps?
I think the history of gravity is
I know
already
of.
kind of amusing on its own, wouldn't you say? They thought they had something, then everybody believed it, and then they retracted from that belief further through conceptual mechanics, thanks to Einstein, and it only made people believe even more in it.
How can you
Because we ain't got
scientifically
shit.
validate time?
Hold on. We've got Rams and Ryan trying to get a word in. Go on, Rams, first.
I was just agreeing that there's no evidence. That's all.
Ryan?
Same here. I was just saying they ain't got shit.
So how would you validate that time is an actual
It isn't.
entity? Yeah,
It
it's just a
isn't.
concept. That's what I'm saying.
You can't.
So if their gravity is based on time, then how will they have scientific evidence for it?
They won't. But to answer your first question more accurately, you said, how will they? Well, they'll do it by way of this fallacy called reification, taking that which is abstract and non-concrete and making it physical and real. So that's called the fallacy of misplaced concreteness, or reification. So they will reify this abstract conceptual entity into physical actuality. So time, a concept, becomes space-time, and you can bend it, and no, it's just conceptual. It's not real. That's why they say things like gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. Well, that's conceptualization. And the method of taking the conceptual into the actual is reification. The gravity is a reification.
Yeah, just a bunch of doublespeak.
But they'll call us unscientific and anti-intellectual for taking that position.
Indeed.
The position of reality.
Yeah. They want acceptance of their just so stories. They want you to think of it as a force, because thinking about things makes them real. Now, in the realm of magic, that's true. You know, a lot of people think they're actually stood on a model, a sphere-shaped model. Another reification. Because they're thinking about standing on a sphere. That's all they're doing. Does that mean you are? No. Earth is obviously and observably flat. But thinking about standing on a sphere makes it a lot of people's reality in their mind. Conceptually a sphere, but they think it's really a sphere. It isn't. That's merely a reification fallacy.
It's
Guys,
reified
we
through
all
culture
know
as well,
George
through
Mooser.
television and movies.
Yeah, exactly, Rams.
George Mooser gave us all the permission, and he told us, stated it very bluntly. We can, we do, we must consider Newtonian gravity as a force. It doesn't mean it really is one, but we don't necessarily have to work at the really is level. Thanks, George.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Not yet.
Look at that stuff. No. Yeah. No.
No? Discord? Anybody? Anything been offered up as scientific?
No,
That's a big negative.
Silent as the void of outer space.
So, over the weekend, I had Dr. John D call me up, and he went over a quasi-experiment. I'm not going to detail it in case I spoil the video he's making, which I'm assuming he is. But he took me through this claim that was being made about polarization. And at the end of it, his conclusion was that it was a just-so story not based on science. And he just wanted me to just say, yeah, that's absolutely the case. You've obviously figured it out, and you're telling me that it's not based on science. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because he was absolutely aghast at this particular bit of information. And I'm like, yeah, do you not remember QE going through the I can't remember which magazine it came from, but pointing out that sort of 99% of all of these studies are non-scientific. None of them, very rarely, have ever been through the scientific method. So when you hear that, you might just write that off as like, nah, it's just words, right? Doesn't mean it. It's just statistics. What is it? 34.2% of all statistics are made up on the spot. So based on that, you could just write it off as not being that relevant. Until you start pulling stuff that you think your reality is based on out of the studies and actually having a little look, you quickly realise they've just made up a little story. Or in this instance, they back-engineered the effect and then engineered in their story to explain it. Well, that's not scientific validity, but a lot of what we think is real is based on this abject nonsense. And it really brought a smile to my face because my wife was sitting listening to this conversation with, someone far more educated than I, a PhD, is having a conversation with me in absolute shock because he can't quite believe that all of this stuff that is just out there, like it's absolute matter of fact. And I rounded out the conversation by pointing out something that was discussed on a show we have in Britain called Quite Interesting, or QI. And on QI, they described the half-life of facts. And he explained with an example of the moons. He asked the question, how many moons has Earth got in orbit? There's a begging the question fallacy we won't get into. But the panel's asked how many orbits, how many moons, and they said something like 12 or 11 or something like that. And back in Series 3, that was a right answer. It got someone points. Now, you fast forward 10 years later, and they're assessing it based on this half-life of facts, and saying that now, NASA say there's 2,000 million, whatever number, massive number of moons that are in orbit around Earth, in this presupposition that things fall around rocks in a sky vacuum. So he was saying that based on that, obviously that fact that got someone point back in the day has now deteriorated into a non-fact. In other words, it's just not true, right? It's just a made-up story that someone gave you based on some maths or something that they thought, and then that's your reality, right? But saying that facts have got a half-life, you might as well say most of what you hear isn't true, even if it's seemingly backed by what seems like evidence. There's a good chance that somewhere down the road it'll be proven wrong. And when we get told science doesn't prove anything, that's the line they use. Even though the method that's very rarely employed, 99.9% of these scientific, in quote, studies, haven't adhered to the scientific method. So science, empirical, what we actually have in our life, just those stories made up and probably going to be proven to be wrong in a not too distant future. Half-life of facts, look it up. Very interesting stuff. Anyone want to add anything before I move on to gas pressure?
Yes. I want to add on to that my Just So stories have a lot better half-life than the regular Just So stories.
What does half-life tell you? It's dying. It's a fact that's on its way to death.
But mine will take a lot longer because I just thought them out a lot better.
Your Just So stories will have longevity, but still eventually die.
Well, once I stop continuating them and expanding them, once I'm dead eventually, yeah, it'll stop unless somebody's like so inspired that they're going to take over that role. But
I see what you're doing. I've just figured out Arwen's smarter than I give him credit for sometimes. Okay, yeah, I see what you're doing. Yeah, that's exactly right, Arwen. So long as you're telling the story often and perpetuating your Just So story, it remains a current, active, let's call it a fact. It may have a half-life, but so long as it's being perpetuated continually, like globes in every movie, in every intro and reference in the language, then that idea with a half-life is currently true, right? Doesn't mean it's actually true, but it's, it's currently being propped up and talked about a lot, therefore true, till it's not.
Well, I could, but it doesn't mean that I would. Because I'll just say, no, this is just the most logically consistent. And that will be correct. And that's not going to be incorrect. It's just that the interest in the conceptualization itself will drop over time as more people figure out that it is just a conceptualization and they learn how to deal with it, where before it was kind of occultly integrated with us.
Again, nice parallel. Arwen's on fire. So yes, in other words, if you've got a globe belief and it's currently being perpetuated continually, you're not necessarily even going to consider the idea that it could be a conceptualization in a sphere-shaped Earth beneath your feet based on a philosophy you've reified. You wouldn't even consider that. Now, eventually, it might reach the point that somebody points out that you're just holding on to a philosophy and it's not actually the world you live in. And it may take some time, with all the propaganda of this myth that Arwen's come up with in terms of his story, to actually be appreciated as a conceptualization. In the meantime, it's your world. It's your reality. Until proven otherwise. Which eventually it will. It's got a half-life.
Until loud enough, big enough, long enough.
Who's that? Goering? Was that Goering? Or was it Hitler himself?
Goebbels.
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 Propaganda minister. Yeah, that makes sense.
Nathan, on this issue, if it's cause and effect, which the scientific method definitely is a way of or means of finding the cause to an effect. Take, for example, water boiling at sea level. Is that ever going to have a half-life?
No. That's why it's got the word empirical within the description of the method. At the end of any experiment, even if you don't guess correctly what caused the effect, you would empirically validate your null. In other words, a hypothesis has two sides. One is to say, if I'm right, this effect I observed at the first stage of the method will be demonstrated when I manipulate what I think causes it. But you've also got another side to the hypothesis, which is called the null, which is the antithesis of that exact statement. If I vary what I think caused the effect I observed at the first step of the method, then it won't cause the effect. Well, if you vary it and it doesn't cause the effect, you've validated, proven your null. So therefore, you've empirically validated it. With water boiling, is that going to be a changeable fact ever? No. Absolutely easily verifiable scientifically. Water boils at 100 degrees C at sea level. Add heat, that's the cause. Get the effect, the water boils. That's never going to change. It's empirically validated. That's the beauty of science, right? The cause and effect has been established. The cause isn't suddenly going to change.
Don't you just lump entropy?
What, entropy of half-life facts? Facts shouldn't have a half-life. They shouldn't be subject to entropy.
Everything is subject to entropy, Nathan.
Nah, ideas aren't. You know, you're only talking about stuff that's occurring in the physical and natural world in terms of your descriptions in natural law. So you're talking about the physical. You could call it physics if you like. It's probably detailed in physics. So, yeah, that's the physical. But an idea, a description of something, well, that's kind of going against my own narrative here. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with QI, because a fact is a fact. If it's a fact, it's unchanging. Shouldn't be subject to a half-life. Shouldn't suffer the effect of entropy increase. You know, the water boiling at 100 degrees at sea level, that's not going to have a half-life, right? It's as true today as it was yesterday. It's never going to be not true tomorrow. That is not a fact with a half-life. It's an empirically valid statement.
Yeah, if it's fact, it will always be a fact.
Speaking of
That
entropy,
would mean it's impossible to prove otherwise, right?
yeah, exactly. If you've reached the point where you've validated your presumed cause and effect, part of the experiment states that it's subject to systematic experimentation. That would be to say that you don't just have someone go, look, I've varied this presumed cause and I've caused this effect, therefore it is correct. There might be some flaw in his apparatus. So you have other people replicate it, perform the same experiment, and validate the result. And when it's been validated again and again and again and again and again and again and again, you can then say it's not like it's going to statistically change. We've got the validated cause of the effect. Never to be altered, never to be proven wrong. Because if it was proven wrong, you'd have validated your null. That would be to say that you did the experiment, varied the thing you think caused the effect, and it didn't cause the effect, but then you'd be validating the null hypothesis and not the alternative. And at that point, you've invalidated the presumed cause. So it would violate the law of identity if somebody says, well, once something's empirically validated with science, it could be proven wrong. Well, no, because you can't be A and not A at the same time. You can't have your presumed cause causing the effect That's alternative hypothesis validation. And not causing the effect, null hypothesis validation, it violates the law of identity. You can't be A and not A at the same time. You can't be the cause and not the cause at the same time.
Hey,
Any evidence that we can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon? Talking of entropy.
that's a negative.
No.
Nothing can overcome entropy, can it?
Discord? Anybody?
Nothing.
Got nothing. Fair enough. Shout out to Al Junkie for the super chat. The globe is bedtime story. See the rest of that. It's got a sheen on the screen. I'll read the rest of it when it goes past, or I'll refresh through the screen. Thank you very much for the super chat, Al Junkie. Really appreciate it. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
Negative.
That they've calculated it, but that's about all. And calculated it using a whole bunch of preconceptions and presumptions.
It's fairy tale. I love it. Great. I'm glad I brought up the other screen to read that. The globe is a bedtime story. A fairy tale. Very good.
How do you measure radius?
Well, a lot of people are so much.
Is seeing optical effects.
Sorry, a lot of people are a lot more comfortable with an explanation than with, well, sorry, we don't know.
Yeah, that's not good enough for most people. Well, that sends people on one of two paths that I've described many times. Either the wow, you mean I don't know why the sky's blue? I know they've got an explanation, but that could be wrong. More likely than not, given that they don't know the distance to the sun. That's amazing. Maybe I'll be the one to find out. Wow, that's really cool. Or the, what do you mean we don't know? Well, you better tell me.
You don't have an answer, so mine's right.
It's funny, right? How some
Yeah,
people will
that's
take
right.
an explanation, no matter how bad it is, as a nice warm blanket, which makes them feel better and they can go to sleep at night, even if they know it's wrong or it makes no sense. But they have an explanation. Somebody gave them a story, and they can accept that story as their reality, and they can feel good at night when they go to sleep. Like a warm blankie.
Like a security blanket.
Yeah. Like Linus and his blue blanket. Yeah.
Yeah, but chocolate. The Black Swan took that blanket away because their calculation for the R is 3959, and the geometric horizon at the 1 foot observer height has to be at 1.22 miles. And so since the Black Swan came out, that blanket got ripped out of their hands. They can't go to bed so easily anymore.
That's why I love this diffraction.
They got an imaginary blanket.
But the boats, man. You could just hang on to the boats. Look, everybody's still talking about boats going over the curves. Just hold on to that.
But Chocolate, why do you think they're hammering on us that we don't understand diffraction these days? Because they know diffraction is the end point of everything.
Oh, you mean they're talking about perspective, which they used to tell us that we made up in order to explain why we're seeing things we shouldn't be seeing in their fake model. But in reality, we're actually seeing these things, and they tell us, "Oh, you guys just make up things like perspective." That's cute.
Yeah, and then you get conspiracy cats that saying we're wrong with diffraction, and he puts up the Rayleigh criterion that actually says it exactly what we're saying.
Well, now they've accepted that there is a resolution limit based on the aperture of a camera, and that's how photographs are produced, or anything you see, or anything you look at, because everything's travelling through an aperture, then that's definitely going to be a limitation of things that we see, right? Well, then they're going to need to explain why that aspect of things we see and its limitations, detailed in the Rayleigh criterion, are not accounted for in Earth curve geometry when it's compared to pictures. So we definitely have this optical limitation, and the calculator's geometric. Well, I know why. It's because they've taken the effects of perspective and called a non-physical diffraction point that moves with the weather, that would be the horizon, and called it Earth curve, a physical obstruction based on a sphere getting in the way of things in the distance. Even though it's a non-physical location they're told we can't measure, can't see, and only exists in maths, it's being compared to optical images that have got diffraction limits. Now, I've pointed this out to Conspiracy Cats. He's questioned me about diffraction. Now, given that in my video explaining that, in long format, it was about a 10-minute video, with me detailing it. I can't remember who encouraged me to trim it out, but I did. I trimmed it out, even addressed it to Conspiracy Cats. Now, he's responded to me. He's got in touch with me on Skype. Now, what he's got in touch with me isn't about why the curve calculator has hijacked the effects of the diffraction limit and perspective and called it Earth curve. He's contacted me because a few, I don't know if it's years or months, but a considerable time ago, Anthony Riley said about gravity, in response to George Moose's claim that gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force, he juxtaposed that with Conspiracy Cats, a teacher, and said Conspiracy Cats is not a paedophile, but you can think of him as a paedophile. Now, that's a juxtaposition between somebody who's not something being something you can think of them, because you can think of anybody as anything you like. No one can control your thoughts, is the point. You can think of gravity as being a force if you want. I can't stop that. Your beliefs are your own. Your thoughts, your feelings, they're yours. But that was what Conspiracy Cats got in touch with me about. He sent me a screenshot of Anthony talking about young pussies. In reference to Conspiracy Cats, he's got cats in his name. And Anthony's referring to this in a hinty, derogatory way. That's what Conspiracy Cats got in touch with me about. Now, number one, I think he's protesting too much about this. It's been a long time, and it's still obviously got under his skin. Why, I don't know, but let's just move on from that. Why he's protesting so much about this, I don't get that particularly. But moreover, why is that the thing he brings up? Some nonsense from Anthony that he screen capped from a completely random Skype message. That's what he's got in touch with me personally about. Not about diffraction limits, the thing he's asked me about. Not about my explanation of the Rayleigh criterion not being accounted for in Earth curve mathematics and being hijacked. None of the actual debating subjects that are being debated about were what Conspiracy Cats has personally contacted me proactively about. It's about this quote from Anthony, Conspiracy Cats is not a paedophile, but you can think of him as a paedophile. That's what he's got in touch with me about. I am not even joking.
Wow.
But what has that got to do with you anyway?
Nothing. We're supposed to be in a back and forth about the hijacking of perspective and calling a physical geometric sphere edge the horizon, when it's a non-physical location that can't be derived or measured. That's the argument we're having here on Flat Earth Debate. Conspiracy Cats has got some issue with Anthony juxtaposing an example from Musa where you can think of something that's not something as something it is in reality when it isn't. Yeah, non-related subject. Moreover, a personal thing to him, between him and Anthony. Something he's taking personally, even though that in and of itself is a debating point. He's saying, I object to you saying you can think of me in this way. Well, we object to a non-force being thought of as a force. That's the point. But he's not harping on about the gravity juxtaposition, just the fact that he doesn't like people thinking of him in that way. Now, if he didn't labour that point and go on about it all the bloody time, maybe people wouldn't think of him in any way that's derogatory when he's not something derogatory, or think of gravity as a force when it's not a force, or address the issue of diffraction he's brought up. Where is it? Why is it that this limit, optical limit, obviously in effect in a photograph, why is it this optical limit is completely ignored and called Earth curve in their mathematics of geometry, which does not account for optics? It can't. It's got actual sizes that don't change with distance. Another point I've raised that Conspiracy Cats is not addressing. Your sizes in the Earth calculator remain the same at any distance. A 10-foot wall is the same at any distance. That means it's not subject to angular limitations and diffraction. Now, I want that addressing, not Conspiracy Cats is not a pedo, but you can think of him as a pedo, some ongoing issue he's got personally with Anthony, juxtaposing gravity in a different argument. Address the diffraction limit. You've brought it up, you clown. Also, he's blocked me. Comes here leaving comments on the channel in the chat, and for about 10 straight minutes I'm replying to him in the comments, going, why isn't he actually acknowledging a word I said? He's got thick skin, my God. And then it suddenly occurred to me, based on what Sean Hawkins did, if they block you, so I go and leave a comment on Conspiracy Cats, he blocks me on his channel. He can still come to my channel and leave comments, but he can't see me. So it's not that he's ignoring me, he just can't see me. So I signed in under the Flat Earth Debate account and started debating with him. But why should I have to do that? Why would you be so cowardly as to say, I don't want to have any involvement with this person and block them? I don't actually block anybody. But if I did, the last thing I'd want to do is go to their channel and leave comments. Isn't that the point of blocking them? That you don't want anything to do with them? So Conspiracy Cats go, I don't want anything to do with Nathan. Okay, I'll block him. But I'll go to his channel and spam comments. Just like, what the hell are these people on? Just address diffraction, cats. The hijacking of it and calling it Earth curve in your maths by way of actual sizes that don't change with distance. Maybe address that, rather than you're worrying about how Anthony's describing you with a juxtaposition about gravity and you not being a paedophile. Because I don't care about that. I care about your Earth curve maths calling a physical horizon. That's what I care about.
Yeah, it sounds like he blocked you because he was a scaredy cat.
Absolutely.
But he still wants to be around you. Right?
Yeah. That's
But just don't touch him because he'll bolt away like a scaredy cat. And just leave a turd somewhere on the carpet.
So wait, so let me get this straight. You address Simon Dan about his reference frames, and he in turn references Conspiracy Cats with his diffraction nonsense, right? Now you address Conspiracy Cats with his diffraction nonsense, and he directly references some other bullshit that's got nothing to do with that.
That's correct.
So they're just playing like leapfrog with the arguments.
That's correct.
Instead of actually addressing them. That's nice.
So what we'd actually like, because we seem to have a list of these people. We've got Thunderfoot Clown, that's yet to address his incorrect assertion that gas behaves like solid bondy bouncy balls and goes down, go boom boom when poured into a fish tank, unlike gas particles which expand in all directions. That's not been addressed. Shout out to Samson for the super chat. Really appreciate it. We've also got Simon Dan. Correct, Chocolate. Simon Dan. Whose reference frames have been ruined? Response, you don't know what diffraction is. All right. What about the reference frames you've ruined? So he's not responding to that. Still yet to respond to it. It's been a very long, over a year period of time. So let's have that addressed, Simon Dan. Whose reference frames have been ruined? What reference frames? Because we on the Flat Earth side don't have any. We already know it's your reference frames that have been ruined because we don't see 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath stuff to cause it to seem to drift away from us. That would be it moving apart as we turn underneath, as is claimed, and does not happen. So your reference frames have been ruined, Dan. You're just not addressing it. You've moved the buck to Conspiracy Cats about diffraction, something that has been hijacked and called Earth curve by way of a physical obstruction at the horizon we do not have. So, Cats comes along and starts asking me about diffraction. No worries. Yeah, diffraction has been hijacked. It's being called Earth curve. So, what's Conspiracy Cat's going to do? Well, he's going to talk about Conspiracy Cats being a pedo, but not being a pedo, because you can think of it as a pedo, like gravity not being a force, but you can think of it as a force even though it's not a force, it's conceptual. That's what he wants to talk about. What about diffraction, Cats? What about reference frames, Dan? What about gas go down, go boom boom, Thunderfoot? Why is it that none of these clowns can actually back the stuff they lay on the table? Cowards, the lot of you. Pathetic. You got to obfuscate and dodge when we actually repeat your question back to us. So we're pointing out that you're asking about diffraction. Okay. Yeah, diffraction. Let's talk about diffraction then. What's that? You don't want to talk about diffraction. You want to move on to an argument with gravity that you're having with Anthony. Why not talk about diffraction and its lack in the curve maths? What about those actual sizes that don't change with distance? Something that's very dependent on diffraction limits. Oh, you don't want to talk about that? Just want to talk about Anthony? Oh, right, I see. That's familiar. Simon Dan, you and your reference frames have been ruined. Oh, right, okay. Whose reference frames? You don't know what diffraction is. What? Yeah, your reference frames have been ruined, Dan, and you want to talk about diffraction? Your diffraction's hijacked perspective, clown, cats. And you want to talk about gravity? Your gas don't go down, go boom, boom, and you want to talk about my Patreon, Thunderfoot? You're all pathetic. You're the best you've got for the globe side's argument. And dancing around when all we do is parrot back the thing you've actually put to us. Put diffraction to us, we go, okay, diffraction, let's talk about it. Nah. Reference frames, ruined. Let's talk about it. Nah. Gas go down with gravity. Let's talk about that. Nah. What cowards?
They just want to fantasize all day long. And yeah, this actual argumentation back and forth is not really working out too well for them because they don't have any.
Yep.
We're going to need to see some rebuttals to these questions. They're questions that have been put to us, you appreciate. These are claims that have been put to us by all three of these individuals. You know, conspiracy cats, in terms of gas pressure, without a container. Without the container, there can be no pressure. These are things that are attributable to him. Now we're on to a different subject with cats. Quotes aside for gas pressure needing containment, as is claimed by him and validated by a description called the second law of thermodynamics, describing precisely that. But now we're on to diffraction. Well, okay, let's talk about diffraction then. You've brought it up. Flat Earth data says it's all optics. Correct. When you're studying an optically captured image, that would be a photograph, then you're talking about optics, not orthographic Muppet vision geometry with an aspect removed that gives things a difference in size at distance. They just use actual sizes, feet and meters, or... That's it. That's all they've got. Feet or meters. That doesn't change with distance. Yeah, they've hijacked perspective and it needs discussing. But no, of course, obfuscation tactics.
Geometry. But they gave that up, saying things like, oh, we've never seen the geometric horizon. Can't see it, only exists in the math. Well then, does it exist on Earth then? In reality? Yeah, okay. That's our whole point. Thanks.
Same goes for drift with the guy earlier. But you don't understand what Coriolis effect is. Your roundabout analogy, where you've got someone turning underneath something not attached with it seeming to drift because you're turning underneath the thing not attached to the roundabout, isn't comparable to Earth because Earth has got atmosphere travelling together with the Earth. And you go, well, that doesn't give you 15 degrees an hour drift then. And we get, what does drift mean? You're like, it's your claim. That's what you're claiming, drift. You should understand what it means. Nah, you're oversimplifying it, moving the goalposts. What, like Tyson claimed happened as Earth is claimed to turn underneath a football? Yeah, that's drift. But that would mean drones drift away from you 1,000 miles an hour on the equator, and that doesn't happen. So what's the response to that? Oh, I don't think you know what drift means. I don't know what drift means. I'm not claiming any. I think your reference frames are ruined. I don't have any. I'm not claiming any. You're the ones with reference frames and stuff drifting away from us that doesn't happen. You on the globe side with your ruined reference frames. Is that going to get addressed? Nah. Best talk about diffraction, right, Dan?
Nathan, how does one go about proving the atmosphere turns as one with the Earth?
It's not a claim from their side.
Atmosphere.
What they're claiming is that you launch a drone off a roundabout, right? And you're turning underneath the roundabout. But the drone moves around with the roundabout as you move on the roundabout. Even though the drone's hovering above it, it's still subject to the turn. In other words, no drift is what you're asking me. How can you achieve no drift? Well, they claim we do have drift. So how can we achieve this Earth and atmosphere travelling together? What, to give them no drift? There's supposed to be 15 degrees an hour of it, so I couldn't care less.
You know what, Nathan? I think I Oh, you probably figured this out long ago, but I'm right now figuring out this idea of the lockstep motion of air with the Earth. It's really based on the misconception that air has like momentum, while it only ever just moves because of pressure situations and never because of momentum, unlike objects and even liquids in containers and all that. They have momentum. But it's the idea that air too, just like bouncy balls, I guess, again, moves with the spin. That doesn't happen in reality because air doesn't really have momentum. It just settles however it can and it redistributes itself based on the pressure situation.
Within the system. So if you're in a car, the air's moving with the car in that closed system. Not perfectly closed, but closed nonetheless. So within that scenario, well, they claim Earth's an open system. So what, you're going to have the Earth travelling around in a little bubble like you in your car when you're moving around through the air? Protected from the outside movement of the air with the air inside moving with you? Well, number one, that's not an example that gives you drift, because drift is you throwing a ball out the window, and in fact it just drops to the ground on the spot it was dropped on the motorway, but you watch it curve away from you because you're travelling away from it. Well, that's two separate reference frames that they claim Earth has. So yes, you can have Earth moving with something, but that would require Earth to be a closed system. And it wouldn't give you drift.
Well, it's even a little bit worse than that, because when you move in a straight line, like the air in a car or in a plane or whatever, it moves in a straight line, right? Well, when you move in a circular path, then you get centripetal situations, and air is actually damn well subjected to that, at least. It does kind of like regradiate depending on centripetal force.
That's not right.
But it does it the opposite way. It does it to the outside. It gathers pressure to the outside. So, but the way they say, no, it just moves just like as is with the Earth without any, shift because of it, long-term shift of the pressure. No, that doesn't happen. That can't happen because Earth is not moving in a straight line. No, it's moving in circles.
Not moving at all, but yes, in their model.
Yeah, in the model. I mean, sorry.
I mean, I don't know what we can do. We're in a situation where we're in the minority. We get challenged by complete idiots. We respond to their challenge, and they give us a non sequitur back. It happens all the time. Now we've got three Joes. That would be Conspiracy Cats, Thunderfoot, and Simon Dan. They all need to be held to account. So how do we do that? How are we going to hold these clowns to account for their abject stupidity and nonsense?
You call them out. You call them out is what we've been doing. It's the only thing.
Yeah, but Arwen, not even that works. They just send their trolls to try and defend the things for them.
Yeah, that's true. But hey, if somebody picks up on it, then they might take notice and then carry that with them for later. So that's all you really can do with like people that are so drug into their fantasy or are even professional scam artists, but then they would be in the know, right? Yeah, they constantly convolute things. So the only thing you can ever do is just point out what they're doing and then hope that people will take note of that. That's all you can do, really. Unless there's some legal things you can do about it, but
no.
That's not the case. So
I just want them to recognise their own wrongdoings. And don't get me wrong, Arwen. By saying this and voicing this, I am actually in effect doing it.
Indeed. But that's because we were just asking, like, yeah, what do you do? Well, you're doing it. You're doing it right now. You're calling it out.
Indeed.
I don't want to try again, put this in place that they don't like.
Say again, Neil.
Neil.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I had to disconnect and come back in, so you got my conversation.
It's all good. Has anything transpired over the weekend? I did ask at the beginning of the show, during the housekeeping questions. Any interesting turns of events, videos released, things that need addressing?
Well, a U.S. election tomorrow. Crazy Tuesday. Woo. Woo.
No.
So
No.
that
Well, I got a buttered Craig from Fat Ferret. He wants to debate me because he's buttered. So at least I'm debating Wednesday. Conspiracy Cats also wants to debate me because I'm also giving him some buttered. But yeah.
Oh, you mean flat Earth related? No, it's been kind of quiet. I think. Oh, except the Globus. I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
Is that the current? I had no idea the election was tomorrow. I mean, I don't watch media.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't care less.
No,
But there we
it's
go.
good for you, man. I'm glad. Must be very peaceful.
Yeah, it is. Same goes for the British lockdown. You know, my wife told me about it this morning when I was going out to a class. She's like, "You realise this will be the last of those classes?" I'm like, "Why?" It's like, "Well, there's a UK lockdown that's coming in on Thursday." I'm like, "Oh, nice that they can put a date on it. Isn't that handy?" Stupid. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But there we go. There's a date on it, apparently, and I didn't know about it, and that's typically the case. You know, I tend to be a lot happier not knowing. Ignorance is bliss.
I love that, Nathan. The virus knows to come in on a specific date. It just knows. It's a smart virus. Smart.
Yeah, it's invited to places. Gets invited to places.
Let's not get this
Some
right.
places,
Look,
It's a mental virus. It gets into people's heads, and then they start to do ridiculous things.
Right, look. Occasionally, magic tricks need
Exactly.
to be recast. Right now, we're in a time where the magic spell's being recast for whatever reason. I don't care. Right, I just don't want to mess with that. If that's okay with you guys, I value my channel too much. Sorry. Not to kill the conversation stone dead. I was just hoping you'd say, yeah, Slice Barcane came out and said he'd got scientific validity for Earth Curve or whatever. That's what I was kind of aiming for, as opposed to...
Hey, Slice Barcane came out and had scientific validity for Earth Curve.
No, he didn't. He doesn't know what hypothesis is.
When's the last time anybody heard of Paul Voigt with the molten iron core? He's the only one that's ever addressed it, even as a baller.
Who's addressed molten iron core?
Wasn't it again like Paul Voigt or...
Paul Voigt! Wow, that's a blast from the past. Yeah, Paul Voigt claimed there was evidence of it. He just wasn't willing to actually give it up to Anthony, was he?
So nobody's heard of him ever since? Or...
I'm sure he's around. They just don't come here, do they? They'll say that there's a mute burn in effect, and therefore they couldn't possibly come and actually defend their nonsense.
Yep, and then they call us cowards because they don't show up.
Yeah, and with Nathan, they really just want revenge at this point. They just want to lure you out of your throne room here. It's very effective court, right? Drag you out of there to just like, oh, no, this is more fair. Come to this stupid little place so we can take revenge and now make you feel ashamed for no real reason. But we're just like, oh, we're so frustrated with you. Now this is how we feel. Oh. And you'll be like, okay, this is a complete waste of time because you still don't have any argument. You're just trying to shame me out of nowhere. And Nathan knows that. So that's why he doesn't do that anymore. Because
I thought it was quite comical, actually. Simon Dan put out a video of me debating with Conspiracy Cats on someone else's channel. So, you know, when it got to the point of talking about diffraction, and as I detailed earlier, takes a fairly significant time, excuse me, to detail the diffraction limit. Now, obviously, diffraction as a single word isn't going to encompass the description that incorporates a hijacking of something that we see in the form of perspective and the limitations of an aperture. I can only just summarize it in 10 seconds. So in the case of Conspiracy Cats, when he's got an opportunity on Anthony Riley's channel to talk over me and Fundy mute me about 6 or 7 times, at some point I just gave up. So that's what happened. Now from there they say, well, we've got a win. He's just given up. Clearly he doesn't know what diffraction is. So then when he gets to me on my channel, of course, saying, yeah, I do know what diffraction is, I've had half a dozen to a dozen guests discussing diffraction and how it relates directly to this subject. So I then labour how that is relevant to the subject matter. Does it get a response? No! Of course it doesn't get a response. Why? Well, because it's not a lowbrow ad hom anymore. No, it's suddenly a debating subject. Suddenly, diffraction is actually the hijacking of the horizon as a physical location. That's part and parcel of your claim that Earth's a sphere. So diffraction's critical to this subject. Let's discuss it. Anyone hear the crickets?
Oh no, nothing
yeah.
really is level. Get out of
Yeah.
here. Ah.
I'll just tell you what Conspiracy Cat said to me. No, you don't understand diffraction. It has nothing to do with distance and angles.
So what does it have to do with then?
So it's an
And
optical
at the same-
limitation. No, let's not get into an argument about what diffraction is or isn't. So there's a limitation based on aperture. And the photos used to claim sphere proof are definitely optical in nature. So they're definitely subject to this optical limitation then. Why isn't it in the maths? I'll tell you why it's not in the maths. Because they've removed all aspects of perspective, even though they're absolutely in effect every time you photograph anything ever. And they've called those effects Earth curve.
No, you see, the reason they don't like it, Nathan, is because we can prove, we're using the Rayleigh criterion, that the larger object of the ground is going to diffract over the smaller object in the distance. They don't like that because then they say it's not Earth curve.
Yeah, we've destroyed radius. They've no longer got a physical geometric sphere edge horizon. When they were claiming they had got a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, based on the radius we've debunked with the black swan, they used to say that physical obstruction blocked things in the distance. Now, those things in the distance were given a feet and inches or meters value that didn't change with distance, even though instinctively everybody watching knows that as you get further away from something, it gets smaller. Not in actual size, but in angular size. An optical limitation. Well, these things are ignored because they have taken these effects and called them Earth curve. It's just that simple. Shout out to the Flat Earth Fellow for the super chat. Send some sunglasses, and also Unicorn Laser Eyes. Let's bring it by the screen and read out his super chat. Bear with me 1 second. Heard a great one-liner the other day. I got glow proof. Ha 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 ha. Thank you for the super chat, Unicorn Laser Eyes. Really appreciate it.
Nice. Yeah, it's a reoccurring joke. We hear it a lot, don't we? There's just no punchline there. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's all contained.
The punchline being the argument, though. That's why. Just people say it's a globe. It's all the proof. And then what is it? Let's think back, because I hadn't actually thought about it before I said that. Because people just say that, right? Right? That's normal. Okay. Globe proof. Wait, there were some mathematical things. Is that proof? Stars? Like they even like bring it forth like a question sometimes. Because people that just assume it's a globe, they say it before they think about it because that's normal, right?
Yeah, but they make the claim. They make the claim and want us to figure out their claim for them.
Oh, but that's what the trenchers do over here. I'm talking more general. People, normies.
Oh yeah, normies. Yeah, no, they don't think. They're just because they're indoctrinated
Of course,
by it.
it's a
Just
globe,
comes out, yeah.
right? Right?
Well,
It just
it's a
has to be.
It's a conditioned response without thought.
Well said.
So back to what you were just saying, Nathan. Smaller in size due to angular size, but not actual size. How is this not picked up by anybody? It's in every picture. You can go anywhere with a trench glober next to you, and it's right there, but they deny perspective.
Yeah, they used to say it's not needing perspective because it's geometry. You're just working out the physical size and shape based on geometry. So orthographic view, actual sizes only, you don't need it. But that claim we haven't heard uttered since 1st Jan 2020. Why? Well, because saying it's just geometric. Oh, right. Where'd you get your geometric value of R from? Well, from the same exact thing we claim blocks, boats and buildings, a physical horizon that we measure the R from. Well, we've debunked it. So you can't use the excuse that, well, the reason we don't take any of these optical limitations into effect is because it's geometric. Is it? So you've got a geometric tangent point for a horizon then? No, you haven't. We've debunked that. Quote, it only exists in the maths. We wouldn't expect to see a geometric horizon. And on and on and on. So no, it's not because it's geometric, because you don't have a geometric horizon. So your claim that things are blocked by a geometric horizon and you don't need optics because it's geometry is absolutely blown out of the water by the black swan.
Yep.
This has been a great show.
And terrestrial refraction can't save them either. It really used to be the first go-to, you know, when we would address that. Remember that?
Yeah, just say it one word. Refraction.
Paradox.
Why can't that save them?
Because it's based on R. It's based on a geometric value. If it's just Earth curve maths geometry, well, that needs a tangent point. The horizon being that tangent point, as they claim it blocks stuff with its physicality. Well, their refraction is a mathematical 7/6R in standard form. Standard refraction, otherwise known as terrestrial refraction, bends light at the rate of R. Well, you need R, and they can't get it. So you can't move the horizon with R if you can't measure R.
Yeah, you can't say which
What a
came
shame.
first.
Oh, I'm going to have to mute you all so I can read out this from Flat Earth Data. 1.22 times 0.00005/0.005 equals 0.000122 times 57.30 equals 0.0069. This is the maximum resolution of the human eye. 3 miles slash tangent of 0.0069 equals 24911 miles, the size of Earth, from the maximum angular limit of the eye. What a coincidence. Not a coincidence at all, Flat Earth Data. Thank you very much for the $27.99 super chat. Really, really appreciate it. But more appreciative of your sentiments. Oh yes, what a coincidence. There's that 1.22 number again. I wonder why. Yeah, because they've taken the effect of perspective and they've called it Earth curve. They've taken the angular resolution limit of your eye, and where it would put a diffraction limit, that would be the horizon, and said that that's where Earth curve sits. 3 miles for a 6-foot man. That's correct. They've hijacked perspective and called it Earth curve. And what's this that they've used to do it? Diffraction. Well, what's the best defence? Call Nathan out for not knowing what diffraction is, even though our maths has hijacked the effect of diffraction and called it Earth curve. Thank you very much again for the super chat, Flat Earth Day. That was epic.
Yep, all just optical.
Well,
exactly.
What they used, they basically replaced the real life thing, but what they actually used to do it every single time is math. Most of their works is mathematics wizardry. Reification of a mathematical structure that works kind of out with what they got data-wise, and it's there to reify the conception and the twisting into reality so that people believe it.
No, well
So
said.
was QE setting them up with that terrestrial refraction? He always knew,
Yes.
and he was setting them up for it?
Yes, there's a funny story behind that I'll tell you about in the after show. So with that, I will say, first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Dum 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 dum. Good show. I do like Monday shows.
Seen the new video that
Go on, Darren. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Has anybody seen the new video that Mr. Sensible's launched about half an hour ago, calling out Anthony Riley?
Shockingly, I'm not a Mr. Sensible subscriber, but feel free to tell us.
Oh, I haven't watched it yet. I just don't know if anybody had.
No, I'm not falling over myself to watch Mr. Sensible videos. They're usually debunked from the summary from someone who's watched it. So, for instance, someone gave us a claim that he was utilising a balloon that had went up to claim proof of Earth curvature. So it's like, right, so he's reified the horizon into a physical sphere edge then. You know what I mean? The summary of what's being claimed can normally be debunked within 5 seconds. So once someone gives us a summary, that'll negate any necessity whatsoever to watch the video, because what he'll be claiming will be debunked within 5 seconds once we get a summary of what he's claiming. There's nothing new under the sun in terms of sphere evidence.
Can we get that funny story?
Well, yeah, I approached QE with a second BLMSB image, which was far clearer from the exact same observation point, same height, everything. In fact, it was probably slightly lower. Anyway, I showed it to him. I was like, look, can you just put this out as the black swan image from now on? Because there's no bendy cranes in it. There's no refraction. It's perfectly crystal clear. It's a black swan where they can't say, look, there's obviously refraction because of the bendy cranes. And QE's response was, yeah, I want him to say refraction. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, that's what I want him to say. I was like, well, why? He's like, well, because the moment they say refraction, they debunk their own claim because they require a geometric horizon. They're using geometry. So if the horizon isn't geometric, it's refracted, then that's the end of their model. In other words, their rebuttal by saying refraction puts the globe paradigm into a paradox, leaves it untenable. So they're debunking their own claim the moment they say refraction, because they're essentially saying what they actually verbalized. Not that when he told me this, it was long before people actually verbalized this as follows, quote, we wouldn't expect to see a geometric horizon. The geometric horizon cannot be seen. The geometric horizon only exists in a maths. All of those are quotes. Now that's them overtly debunking their own model, because what is geometric horizon? Well, that's Earth curve, isn't it? So we can't see Earth curve. We wouldn't expect to see Earth curve. Earth curve only exists in Earth curve maths. That's their reply. So yeah, he wanted them to say refraction because that's the end of the argument.
That's brilliant. Freaking brilliant.
But he didn't find the perfect word for it though. He didn't know it was a paradox.
He knew it was the end of the argument. Sorry,
yeah,
that was in Discord.
True.
Go ahead, whoever that was in Discord.
Has anybody seen the new Veritasium video?
Veritasium. I saw the thumbnail. Vaguely thought it might be relevant to the subject that we cover. Can you remind me what the subject was?
Was how they never measured the speed of light.
Whatever. I've got a video that did. Remember? I actually
everybody.
I posted it in the Master B or the Ballbusters.
Veritasium video.
It's been a while ago though.
Yeah, this one was on Saturday or Sunday. The Veritasium video about Lite came out. I didn't watch it. I'm not that interested. I don't know. It's when you get onto the subject of light, it does tend to take you down a creationism path. And it's not that I disagree with the position or the logic behind it, but it's more the backstory of how we came to be rather than the nature of the reality we're faced with. So it's kind of related when you get onto light.
I have something to say about it.
Go ahead.
No, I get it. Look, he's mostly about just philosophizing, and trying to explain the philosophy so that we can properly reify it all. So,
but
I think it's ridiculous. Sorry, I'll be over quick.
Okay, sorry.
I think it's a ridiculous notion that light has no speed, because I've just seen a demonstration interactively of how it definitely does seem to have a speed that can be varied on the spot, like the distance and thereby the effective arrival time as measured.
It certainly seems to be the case in terms of things like, well, when you've got things that aren't validating that scientifically, but using the principle as taken as read. So, for example, the delayed choice quantum eraser, the delay is obviously a delay in time. So you've got to have a speed for that, right? But the current rhetoric for the speed is what Veritasium are going through, correct?
Could be. I didn't watch the video either, so
it's going to be Einsteinian, right?
Oh, absolutely. The previous one was as well.
Yeah, so it's just going to be that slightly out of date now rhetoric superseded by quantum physics.
But it's the wording of it that says why no one has measured the speed of light.
Fair enough.
The speed of light that they call a speed of light it was never a measurement, it was a calculation. The starting point of that calculation was the pre-assumption that Kepler's solar analemma was correct, because they always try to say that the Earth in their model is moving at a constant rate, but it's not. It's in their model, it's moving at a different rate around the sun all the time. Fastest in the southern summer in December and January, and slowest in the northern summer in June and July, because they are the actual observations of what the sun is actually doing. So they just reverse engineer it, right? Or what the sun appears to do, I should say. What they did is they took what they thought was the speed of us moving past the sun based on the distance they thought the sun was at the time, and they just averaged it. I think it's 677 or something thousand miles an hour or something like that, and they just averaged this speed. That's all they did, and then they went off of that as the starting point of the supposed measurement of the speed of light, and everything started from there. But Einstein because what happened with Kepler's analemma is they stated after Kepler's time that that the reason we go past the sun fastest in December, January, and slowest in June, July, is because we're closer to the sun because we're making an offset elliptical orbit. So this is the best part. The sun's gravitational force pulls us around it faster because we're closer to it in December, January.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Einstein himself debunked that with his theory of general relativity. And then he also uses the speed of light in his E equals mc squared equation. So he's using something that he actually debunked the origin of. The whole thing is a load of nonsense.
So let me get it straight. That's probably why it's unfamiliar, because it's not Einsteinian from what you've just said. So the Copernican model has the elliptical orbit literally causing Earth to physically move faster. Because I almost interrupted you to say, hang on a second, isn't that just the apparent motion of the sun based on the elliptical orbit, but not an actual speed change? But you're saying that in the original Copernican model, you do actually have a speed change that's debunked by Einstein. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they literally added the reason for this speed change was gravity. That was after Kepler's time, because he died a long time before gravity ever turned up. So they added that in after him. And he didn't. I don't know of anything he stated that was the reason. He just said this happened because if you watch the sun, it appears to move faster across the sky in the January and December, and slower in June and July. That's what it appears to do. And Kepler just reverse engineered these observations of what the sun appeared to do above us, and just amalgamated it with the Copernican model. So after his time, they then added in the reason for this was gravitational force, which is debunked by Einstein because he only accounts for one mass. And then he uses this speed of light in his E equals mc squared, most famous equation of all time. So he's using something that he actually debunked.
Right.
That was started off as a lot of nonsense anyway. That it was just an averaged. They just took an averaged speed of what they thought they were moving past the sun at. And remember, we spoke before, the speed of light changed with the distance to the sun. So if they thought that the sun was further, then the speed of light has to change.
Of course,
so
that's where they get all their
that's
where they get all their derivatives, right? They get their light years, they get their 7 minutes traveling time from the light from the sun. It's all based on the same exact model. The distances given the speeds.
Yeah, it all starts with the sun and what they presume we're doing around it and the distance to it.
And they get that distance from Kepler.
Well, I'm not sure. I think originally it was 1 million miles, wasn't it? Then it was 90 million, and now it's 93 million.
Well, no, you need a scalar. It's just the requirement of a scalar. So at some point, somebody's got to arbitrarily assign a size to a not actual sized apparent light, or apparent sized light in the sky. In this case, Venus. So Huygens comes along, takes Kepler's maths, and says Venus is the same size as Earth. Well, that gives you the scale. So then you can apply the third law of interplanetary motion to give you all of the different distances. But you've got to make that first assumption. Well, you've got to make two. You've got to assume Earth's a sphere with a radius value. Then you've got to superimpose that presupposed radius value onto Venus. Then you apply Kepler's third law. That gives you your 93 million mile sun and your 7-minute travel time for the light.
Exactly. As soon as they had a size, then they knew from that what that size would be in comparison to the pre-assumed size we are. Then those two pre-assumed sizes would make it 93 million miles. So that means the speed of light will take, it will take 8 minutes to get to us in their belief, because they already had that. They started off with that. It's all a big circle of nonsense.
Or Weber lies, I prefer.
Yes.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you.
No worries.
It's nice to dig into these old stories, How have they come to pass? How do the mathematics work or not work in the case of the one-body problem?
Well, it's fascinating that the very thing that they don't take into account, that Einstein debunked the whole idea that the moon is controlling our tides, but he also debunked the idea that the reason that the globe model would be going past the sun faster and slower would be down to gravity, because the force of gravity between two masses is debunked since 1915. It's in effect, and he only ever accounts for one mass, and it's about reference frames. Because technically, his theory of general relativity works better on the flat Earth society model, because that's the first one he looked at.
Right, with them moving up.
Yeah, then he won't need any more than one reference frame, or any more than one mass.
Right. I hate that. The fact we have to defend that crap like it's ours. It's like, no, that's part of your rhetoric. The fact that it actually sits reasonably well in a controlled opposition narrative of flat Earth doesn't mean I have to bloody defend it.
Well, technically it's Einstein's, because if you look into flat Earth throughout the ages, it's only this one group called Flat Earth Society, and they're really have only been in force since 2004. But it's mainly that one group. They've been around before that, but it's mainly that one group who pushed that particular narrative. If you go back into history, back into the 1800s, it was all based on Genesis. We're in an enclosed system. But they try and say that all these flat Earth people from all those years ago, they all believed we were on this upward flowing pizza through space. It's not true. They are all Christian people who believed in Genesis. They were not much different than us. The arguments and some of the things that we know now, because we have more access to stuff, we have the internet and stuff, we were a bit more sharp on a lot of things, but in general, they were doing the same thing. They worked off the Genesis model. Now I'm not saying that's correct either. I'm just saying they didn't believe we were on an upward flowing pizza through space, or that space was real. But they try and make it out as if that's what flat Earth believe.
Right.
But really, I believe that it's like, this is only from me and my speculation. You can throw it out the window. I think what's likely to happen is they'll have to accept at some point the Earth doesn't have curvature and isn't rotating. But then suddenly we will be on an upward flowing pizza. And Einstein knew it all along, or Einstein suspected it, and he's a brilliant guy. Here he is, brilliant again. He's brilliant for the second time, because his theory of general relativity will work. So they'll hold on to gravity and space, but they'll do away with curvature and rotation.
But holding
That's what
on
they're
to
likely
these,
to do.
as you put it, holding on to this stuff is merely their reification of a philosophy. So there's no theory from Einstein. It's not scientifically valid. So all we can do in that regard is keep banging on the same drum that these terminologies like theory have been hijacked. Because in the case of Einstein, it's what, a mystic Meg theory? A Nostradamus theory? It's not a scientific theory. Well, the quicker people wake up to the idea that the words and language of an empirical method have been hijacked to validate in the mind's eye of the person who's receiving a just so story, once people appreciate that, it's not about hanging on to a just so story from Einstein anymore. It's like, well, it's not empirically valid. So there's no question of whether or not you need to hold on to the story. And Einsteinian is on the way out anyway, being replaced with quantum validated science. So what are you going to do? Eventually, there's going to be a transition. In terms of the stuff that's actually scientifically validated, that's where we're going. You know, it's back to the not following the half-life of facts and following the empirical evidence. Well, when stuff gets empirically validated in science, that does actually progress the world. Well, if it progresses it in the face of Einstein's just so stories, science, reified, doesn't care. It's just a method. So it's just validated something. Okay, so it flies in the face of what Einstein said. Well, it's only his words. It wasn't a scientific theory. So who cares? Just move on.
Yeah, I found it kind of funny, like a few days after the Veritasium video of how gravity is not a force came out. And then as he was obviously referencing Einstein's general theory of relativity, and then a few days later, another channel comes out, a big old channel, you know, pushing pseudoscience and is talking about how, well, that new hotness is about to be out the window pretty soon because quantum gravity is supposed to be taking over. So it's like, oh, the new hotness is already almost old and busted again. Here we go again. They just got one story taking over another story.
Yeah, they'll incorporate gravity by way of just so story and words like theory and science into actual science that's been scientifically validated. So in the case of a lot of stuff that's called quantum, just because it's got quantum in the title doesn't mean it's actually validated science or it has anything to do with the experimentation that's validated a cause of an effect. But they'll take it and they'll incorporate gravity into it because people will be working at the quantum level because that's the validated science. And therefore they've got to incorporate it somehow. Well, they'll just alter it because that's the beauty of a just so story. You can twist it and manipulate it, outdate it, supersede it, have a half-life, laugh about the fact that, oh, we used to think. Science doesn't prove anything is what the pseudoscience fraternity will cry when they change their just so story. But they're only changing it because there's actually been some scientific validity offered to a phenomena that was yet to be validated and now is. Well, when that flies in the face of Einstein, they've got to do something. Otherwise, they're going to look very stupid when someone comes along and says, actually, that doesn't comport with reality based on this scientific experiment I can present. So they've got to work around that with their stories of sky vacuums and bending mediums.
They say that they're looking for the graviton. And as soon as they find that, then that will change everything and Einstein will be out the window. And they always find what they're looking for. Because if you're looking for something within your story, then you will find it.
A bit like dinosaurs.
And that's the thing. Yeah. Did you say dinosaurs?
I said a bit like dinosaurs. The university that's looking for the particular bones in a particular area because they suspect they'll be there. They often find them there. What a shock.
Exactly.
That's a subject for a different day. I wouldn't have brought that up if it was live right now.
Myself, Chocolate and Arwen were speaking on Thursday evening when the show was over. And we got to the conclusion of what the cause and effect of gravity is. that the cause is belief, and the only actually observable effect of gravity that we've ever seen is a type of psychosis. That's the only effect that I can name of gravity ever having. Is this psychosis because of a need to defend the cause, which is a belief. So the belief is the cause, the effect is a type of psychosis.
Well, it's basically a reification, and you kind of reified the reification into supposedly being a proof for it, which would be a paradox.
No, that's
But,
correct. That's
yes.
absolutely spot on, Arwin, but it doesn't change his point. You're right. You're absolutely right. That was a really good summary. I was just thinking of how I could phrase it. That was beautiful. Absolutely right, Arwin, but it doesn't change the fact that their reification makes it into the actualization. That's not actually turning it into something physical. It doesn't make gravity a force. It just means they're thinking of it as a force exactly as instructed. And paradoxically, you don't suddenly get forces happening when you think about them being forces. So yes, you're right, but that's Brian's point, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can't honestly say I know of any other effect that I've ever witnessed due to what they call gravity. Gravity might be a story, but it's in reality, it's a real thing that we speak about. It's not real, but it's the real thing we speak about.
Well,
so the only effect that I know of, that I've ever encountered, is a type of psychosis within the person who's defending it.
Indeed. And with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.